Do you know how to fight? Every Friday night, my father would drive me to what he called character building exercises, but it was actually an underground fighting ring where parents bet on their children beating each other bloody. My father Milo was a monster who collected videos of animal fights and kept detailed journals about which techniques caused the most damage. He'd watch footage of dog fights while taking notes about bone-breaking angles. Milo had discovered these underground child fights through his network of degenerates and immediately saw me as his personal gladiator project. He'd force me to watch hours of combat footage while he explained which moves would permanently disable opponents, and he'd get visibly excited describing how much money wealthy perverts would pay to watch children destroy each other. Milo would lock me in our basement for days with nothing but protein bars and combat training videos. When I turned 10, Milo told me that I now belonged to the fighting circuit and that my job was to disable and disfigure other children for the entertainment of rich sadists who paid thousands of dollars per fight. He told me that parents would bid on which specific injuries they wanted to see, and that I'd better deliver exactly what the customers ordered, or he'd let them practice on me instead. Milo had already collected a $5,000 signing bonus and spent it on camera equipment so he could film my fights from multiple angles. You're not my son in that ring, you're my investment, and investments that don't pay off get discarded. The fighting ring was held in the basement of an abandoned slaughterhouse, where about 50 wealthy spectators would gather every Friday to watch children fight to the point of permanent disability. These weren't amateur brawls, but organized gladiator matches where kids fought until they were bloody pulp, and the crowd would cheer loudest when they could hear a bone snap. My first fight left me with a shattered collarbone and 3 broken ribs, but Milo just wrapped me in duct tape and told me to walk it off. By my third fight, I had permanent nerve damage in my left hand from a kid who stomped on it with steel-toed boots, while the crowd screamed for more. Milo would bet on exactly which bones I'd break in my opponents, and scream detailed instructions about how to maximize damage without killing them too quickly. The spectators were wealthy businessmen and politicians who'd place bets on whether a child would lose an eye or an ear. I watched a 12-year-old girl get her spine severed by a boy with a metal pipe while the crowd threw money at her convulsing body, and I saw kids forced to keep fighting even after their arms hung at impossible angles. After 6 months, I was missing 2 teeth, had scars covering my entire torso, and my nose had been broken so many times it was completely crooked. Milo would drive me home afterward and spend hours reviewing footage of my fights, pointing out missed opportunities to cause more suffering and planning how to make me more vicious. When I told him I felt sick hurting other kids, he'd beat me unconscious and lock me in a room with pictures of my opponents, telling me they were planning to kill me. I was forced into this nightmare for 8 months, watching children get permanently maimed while rich monsters cheered and threw money at their suffering bodies. During one fight against a kid named Carter, who was already missing 3 fingers from previous matches, I refused to use the crowbar they'd given me and just stood there while he collapsed from exhaustion. Milo went ballistic and dragged me out of the ring by my hair, screaming that I'd just cost him $10,000 in bets. That night, I told him I was done fighting and that I'd rather die than cripple another child. For one brief moment, I felt like I'd finally found some piece of my humanity that he couldn't destroy, and I thought maybe this nightmare could end. But Milo had already promised the fight organizers that I'd participate in a special tournament where the last child standing would win $100,000 for their parent. He told me that backing out would mean he'd sell me to one of the spectators who collected damaged children as personal slaves. When I kept refusing to train, he broke my pinky finger with a hammer and told me he'd work his way up to more important bones if I didn't get back in line. Milo started bringing other parents to our house to examine me like livestock, and they'd discuss which punishments would be most effective for breaking my resistance completely. He told me that if I didn't fight in the tournament, he'd chain me up in the basement and let the spectators take turns practicing their favorite torture techniques on me until I begged to get back in the ring. But then that kid Carter's mother followed us to one of the fights after she noticed her son's fresh injuries. She walked into the slaughterhouse basement and saw dozens of children being forced to fight while adults cheered and threw money. She immediately called police from the scene, and within minutes the entire place was surrounded. Milo was convicted of human trafficking and child abuse, and I spent 2 years in therapy recovering from the psychological conditioning. I'm 19 now and still struggle with violent impulses from the trauma, but at least I know that every monster who hurt those kids is rotting in prison.